say there's a lot going for Matiangi. First, the people of this country are sort of agreed in some way that they have had enough of the usual politicians. So Matiangi not being the usual politician, that works for him. Secondly, the people of this country want a worker. I think politicians have let us down. So Matiangi has that again going for him, because when he was minister in ICT, education, interior, he was just about the only visible minister you could put your hand on. So when Kenyans say they are looking for a worker, Matiangi quickly comes into mind. Something else that seems to be working in the favor of Matiangi is that Fred Matiangi is the talk of town. He has received what one would view as a lion's share of political talk in this country for a while now. In fact, early last year, I tweeted saying people were saying Matiangi was in the country when he wasn't, because I was sure he had been attending a function in Atlanta where Mother Karua was. So one might want to ask themselves, why are people talking about Matiangi? Of course, Matiangi is one of the 5 or so presidential candidates we have. The political parties have fronted their generals. Honorable Kioni introduced Matiangi to the country as a presidential candidate for Jubilee, just as we have Eugene Wamalwa for DAP, Kalonzo for WIPE, and so on and so forth. So Matiangi is receiving more than what would be normal share of public limelight. And I've been asking myself why. I've also heard people saying Matiangi is just another wannabe. He's not a serious candidate. Perhaps those ones will be going too far, because it's in public domain, public knowledge, that actually Uhuru and Raila, when they entered into their handshake and introduced BBI, their agreement was that in 2022, the two were going to support Matiangi Mutai Kagwe ticket. So Matiangi is not just another boy you've met in the streets of perhaps Keroka or somewhere in Keumbo, where people sell sugarcane and so on and so forth. He's a political force on his own right. And that explains why many people are talking about Matiangi. I know there are many negatives that people are also mentioning. We would expect Matiangi to come out in the public and explain to the people of Kenya why he thinks he deserves to be their candidate. But I would quickly say there's a lot going for Matiangi. First, the people of this country are sort of agreed in some way that they have had enough of the usual politicians. So Matiangi not being the usual politician, that works for him. Secondly, the people of this country want a worker. I think politicians have let us down. So Matiangi has that again going for him, because when he was minister in ICT, education, interior, he was just about the only visible minister you could put your hand on. So when Kenyans say they are looking for a worker, Matiangi quickly comes into mind. Something else that seems to be working in the favor of Matiangi is that when Gen Zs are trying to search, the name Matiangi seems to appear a lot more than the names of other people who seem to be what Gen Zs are looking for. So I'll just say that it's not for nothing that everybody in the country is talking about Matiangi. It's not for nothing that his coming has elicited a lot of excitement. Of course, not everybody is happy with him, but the truth is that Matiangi is on almost everybody's lips. And like I've explained, the bar, there's a lot going for Matiangi. Whether or not he makes use of that to his advantage is another story. Those close to Matiangi, like Onyonka, will perhaps have to point two things to him. One, that many candidates have come out, not necessarily in Kenya, with a lot going for them, but they have never exploited that. Instead, they have allowed themselves to drift into just another candidate. The second thing which people like Onyonka must deliver to Matiangi is that when you run for office the first time, the people you encounter who spoil your campaign are political conmen and brokers. They have a way of getting attention from you, and they have a way of making you want nothing to do with genuine people. It brings to mind the Hillary role in the Bill Clinton campaign. That more often than not, when you are running for office, especially if you are a credible candidate, there are people who specialize in chasing good men from you, good men and women, so that they remain with you, and that becomes your downfall. The famous treatise from President of Ghana, come back, Mahama, will explain what I'm talking about. That when you are in power, or especially when you are going for election and you have a good chance, there are men and women who will surround you and say the things you want. There has been talk of a project, as we all have heard, Huru's project, and Jeremiah Kioni put it, the less said about that, the better. You see, when you have branded a project, it comes with its own problems. But again, who wouldn't want Uhuru's support? Truth be said, who among all these candidates wouldn't want Uhuru's support? Who wouldn't want the populous Mount Kenya region to support them if they are running for president? As to whether he is a project or not, that is a small matter, because there's always talk of a project. If, for example, Kalonzo were to be supported by Gachagua, would that make him a project, Gashagua's project? I mean, there's always somebody in the politics supporting the other. Politics is about soliciting for support. Politics is about interests. And therefore, the crude labeling of project, I don't think that should derail anybody. If I were running for president and somebody called me Uhuru's project, it wouldn't even bother me, because Uhuru's support will come with so much. There's something people have said about, because now I must sign off immediately after this. There are things that are coming out. Some people are tending to suggest that Matiangi comes with his baggage. That happens in politics all the time, all the time. In fact, in 2007, as we are talking about changing this country through Raila Odinga, inevitably, there were people in the Pentagon and around the Pentagon who had questionable characters. But as a country, we said, in the manner in which Achebe talked about the early politicians in 1989, that when the bigger desire is to bring change, sometimes it may not be so important in terms of the people you are working with. What you look at is the change. That every politician in this country has a past. That past, like Kabando says, must be questioned, must be interrogated, except that it must not be allowed to stand in the way of the greater desire of the country to change and move forward. So yes, and somebody else has said, I think it's Kabando again, sometimes it might be desirable for you to say, fine. Even in the Bible, they say, when I was a child, I did things that children do. When I was in some position, perhaps it looked that that was the thing to do. Now, with hindsight, And with more experience in life, I think that wasn't the right thing to do. And I apologize to people, or you explain. But to think that among the politicians we have in this country, we will fail to pick one merely because of what they have done or not done. I think we will not get a politician that is absolutely clean in this country. It is for that reason that I've always argued, if Kenyans want a really break with the past, then they must think differently, think outside the catchment areas from which we get the leaders we call leaders. So therefore, I'm just concluding by saying, Matiangi being Uhuru's project, that's nothing. In fact, to me, is a serious plus, because everybody is somebody's project. In fact, ultimately, the best candidate will be the people's project. So being a project is nothing. And finally, again, like I've said, everybody comes with some challenges. And somebody has said for Matiangi, some of these so-called challenges are actually what is attracting people to him. Because truth be said, Kenyans want somebody who can deliver. Matiangi has shown in the past he has the capacity to deliver. The part of him looking arrogant is also the same part that makes him a no-nonsense person. The sort of person Kenyans will be looking for now, like Professor Naituli has said. So I don't see any of these challenges standing in the way of Matiangi. Only to say that the people of Kenya may require some answers in some aspects. And that is for Matiangi and his team. Manyonka, I hope you are listening and delivering this. For them to ensure they are able to communicate with the people of Kenya, have a conversation with the people of Kenya around the issues that may make some people uncomfortable. And I don't think that's too much. Thank you, Diba. And